Sometimes I can't help but daydream. Excited for that future that has no set date. Not being upset with where I'm at, but wishing I was there. Sadly, as much as I hope, all it really is just that. Nothing but a dream, at least for now. There's nothing wrong with dreams, but it's hard to convince yourself that they could be a reality someday, especially when they're far off. That doesn't mean I can't move forward though, and in my case, I've got a whole lot to do before I can even consider starting this project. I've recently made up my mind that something can be in progress and useful at the same time. But at the moment, that's an untested theory. With the garage specifically, sure, it's been useful in its creation, and I'm sure it will be useful while I'm improving it and working on cars in it. But honestly, it's not there yet. Right now, it's really nothing more than a construction zone, one with many things left to do. I've got to figure out lighting, I've got to figure out the floor, insulate the garage door, buy a bunch of storage, and the list just keeps growing. But that spiral of thought is exactly how I got myself in the mess I was in earlier, convinced it needed to be completely finished to be useful, which isn't the case. In other words, I need to figure out what's actually critical and what's something I can always do later. How can I get this place ready for cars as soon as possible? And the answer to that question probably lies in where I left off. We finished painting, but we still have to finish the walls. Not only do paint splatters exist where they shouldn't, but right now it looks pretty bad because there really is no trim, which I would consider needed since we painted it knowing it would be there. Before I can do that though, I've got to sand off the extra paint, which honestly is a lot easier than I thought it would be. One of the biggest benefits to how we made our ceiling is the fact that it's made out of wood, sanded wood specifically. So anywhere there's extra paint, we can simply sand and it'll look like it was never there. And considering how fast this was actually going, it really only confirmed my appreciation for this material we used. And sure, details like this aren't inherently mission critical for getting this place ready to work on a car project, but this is something we have to do before we can put trim up. And trim is something I definitely would consider critical. We painted the walls assuming it would be there, and the only way our ceiling is going to look like it's intentional with our walls is with it being there. So even though it is something we could do while working on car projects in here, if we get it done now, the ceiling and the walls are effectively complete, which is definitely worth pursuing. Now, to be honest, it still doesn't look great, but that is also something I was expecting. Since it's such an old building, there are no straight lines anywhere. And since the ceiling is a different material than the wall, we can't make them join up traditionally. The trim is where that unification is going to happen. The trim is where those straight lines are going to come from. The trim is what I've got to do next. Man, I can't get over how useful borrowing this truck has been. Ever since I even started working on the garage, this has really been the most useful tool I've had. Too bad I can't borrow it forever. Really makes me wonder what my life would be like with my own though. Huh, now that's a thought. I picked up what was hopefully enough trim to do the entire garage minus the trim that's on the floor. As much as I would like to do all of the trim now, the floor is going to be its own in-depth project to tackle. It won't be a weekend job, and I think I'd like to get a couple car projects done before tackling it. Either way though, to do it right, I would have to take the lower trim off, so it really makes no sense to do it now. The trim I chose was made of wood, which, given the ceiling, I think will be perfect as an accent color for this entire space. The whole point was to not lose the original charm this place had, and since it was originally a wood shop, this is quite literally the closest thing you could get to it. And while it's not super common anymore to have trim like this on the ceiling as well as the floor, I think it really fits this place. It's an old garage at the end of the day, and I do think it would be silly to convince myself anything otherwise. But overall, the biggest benefit of having the trim up here is what it does visually. Ever since I came up with the idea for the ceiling, this was the final step of it. Part of the original plan, in other words. I intend to nail this to the drywall at a height where it is flat with the joists. It's going to stick out a little bit, but it's going to add depth. And more than that, it's going to add a straight line in a building where there really was none, which will tremendously help the overall appearance. It's so weird to me to be worried about a step like this when I consider where this place actually started from. Having seen how unusable this place was before insulation really puts into perspective how small of an issue worrying about trim lines really is. Issues are relative though, so even though it's small in the grand scheme of things, it's still worth tackling. With the final piece of ceiling trim in place, I was pretty excited. I've been making this place better with every single week since I bought it, and I really see no reason why that should ever stop. Sadly, even with this here, it's still not usable. After all, that's not even the only trim we still need to do. I want the windows to look natural in here, especially since they were originally part of the building and for a while were completely covered up. Now that they're back, making them look like they were something that was always here is something I care about. So the best way to make them look like they belong here is to use materials that are already here. In other words, lining the inside of the windows with the same material that I did the ceiling out of, and trimming the outside with the same trim I'm using for the rest of the building. It's a lot of fairly precise cuts, but at this point I've cut a lot of both of these materials. So in the moment, I'm enjoying it. Jobs like this are always more enjoyable when you have fun with it. It's never fun when you convince yourself that everything you do is do or die and has to be absolutely perfect. It's a lot more enjoyable to just go with the flow and try to make things better constantly. It also helps that this stage is purely cosmetic. It's a really weird feeling looking at this place now and remembering what it used to be. It feels familiar and nostalgic, yet new at the same time. Like it is the same space, but not the one that I knew. I really don't know how to describe it. What I do know is, in my quest to make this place usable as soon as possible, having the ceiling and walls for the most part done is a pretty big milestone. And as far as trim goes, the only thing left is the trim on the floor, but that really only will make sense once the floor's done. And it's hard to tell with how dirty it is, but the floor is actually sealed. It's an old coating though, and you can hardly see it with all the junk that's on the floor. Actually, now that I notice it, there's junk everywhere. Wait, I didn't realize it got this bad. No, wait, this place is actually filthy. It's basically a construction zone. Tools thrown around and exposed nails, trash on the floor, enough dust to give you asthma, insulation, paint tool, wood chips, actual wood, car parts, mud. Everywhere I look, I keep seeing things I need to move, things I need to clean. Multiple weeks of construction, multiple weeks of things I need to deal with before this place can be used. It's actually like it's never ending. At this point, it feels like I'm pretty far from actually being able to move a car in here, let alone work on it. Maybe, even though it might not feel like a step forward, I should take some time to clean what all is actually here. Who knows how long that's gonna take though. In all honesty though, it's not that surprising that this place is messy. I mean, it's been go, go, go for who knows how long. Pretty much every week moving on to the next project, with no real time for a breather. And we've made good headway because of that. But this place is now haunted with the ghosts of jobs completed. The extras left over. Some worth saving, and some really worth nothing. So that leaves me with really no option other than this. If I want to fill this place with storage and eventually tools, followed by cars, I do need to put away everything that's not related to that. And throw away everything that's not related to anything. The wood tools go into the future woodshop shed, and the countless buckets of GTI and S6 parts go into storage for the moment when I do start those projects, for when they no longer stay as daydreams. At this point, who knows when that'll be though. The more I clean, the more I realize all there is to clean. This is gonna take a while. Time passed, and slowly I was starting to be able to move again. Sometimes a mess like this builds gradually. You get used to it, and you don't realize how oppressive the atmosphere it created was until it's gone. Finally enough space to breathe. Other than the stuff that's already put away, this table represents all of the tools and parts that are worth keeping. But none of these have a place in a car-focused workshop, so once the floor is swept, they're gonna get moved too. That table is so large that I have to pretty much move it to a clean spot to have any chance of reaching under it though. Back to sweeping, I guess. I'm starting to think about how this place should be laid out to work on cars effectively. Realistically, I can have one big project and another small one going on at the same time. But it's not an endless space, so I'll need to be smart with the layout. I originally thought that this table was way too big to be useful, but having used it now, it is so nice to have that much table space. Similarly, I think it'd be cool if we could reuse this set of drawers. Maybe I'll just put it over here so I can see the layout. Oh, well, that's just my luck. I mean, I have always wanted one of those big drawered toolboxes. Maybe this is my sign to buy one of those. I mean, it's not like they could cost that much. They're just a box after all. Wait, they cost how much? Oh, they must have added an extra zero in there or something. Well, I guess that's a bigger brand. Maybe Harbor Freight has a cheaper option. Yeah, a Harbor Freight special. They can't all be that expensive. Oh, yeah, they can, actually. Well, considering that's more than I spent on all of the cars I bought in the last couple weeks, I don't really think that's in the cards. Yeah, no, that's actually not happening for a while. So I guess there's only one thing I can do. Make the most of what I already have. This old storage piece really ain't much, but it's what I have right now. And it's an upgrade from what I'm used to having before I bought the place. So to be honest, I should be appreciative of it. Plus, with a few nails and a coat of paint someday, it'll be as good as new. And with that mentality, I continued cleaning the rest of the garage, finally ridding it of most of all the construction trash that has been in there since I first bought it. All the while overlooking something. Something marginally important, I'd say. Something that would quite literally stop me from doing any car work in there, and had been staring me in the face since I first bought it. But like I was saying, at this point, that wasn't even on my radar. While one of the big toolboxes is far out of my budget at the moment, this wasn't. In fact, it was actually a gift from an uncle of mine who was cleaning out his garage. A rolling table cabinet. From the perspective of a fully set up garage, it might not seem like much, but for me, and a garage with quite literally nothing in it, this was perfect. No idea what's gonna go in here yet. I mean, I don't even have any car tools here yet, but I'm sure it'll be useful nonetheless. Earlier that day, I was thinking more and more about the layout. I like the idea of using this back area next to the big table as the main work area for whatever car is really torn apart. Something as big as pulling the S4 engine for turbos and whatnot. But if I do that, I want more room back there. So this old chest of drawers would make more sense on the other side of the room, giving me more than enough width to get all the doors open. I just had to move this thing carefully since it was already falling apart. And the cool thing is, this garage is big enough that I could have two projects going on at the same time. A more involved one in the back, and another right in front of it. That's gonna be a pretty big change considering I'm used to working on cars for the most part outside. I've even got enough space to build an engine like the VR I have right here. Wait. I don't have a way to move this. It was put in the middle when it was delivered so I could work on the walls, but now I can't get a single car in here. I guess some costs are inevitable, aren't they? To be fair though, buying an engine hoist has been on my radar for a long time. It wasn't a matter of if I was gonna get one, more of a matter of when. The S4 engine has to come out soon after all. I've wanted to be at the stage where I could pull an engine and build it since I was pretty much in high school. That's always been a bucket list item of mine, a dream I've had since I was a kid, and it's weird how close it actually is now. Almost like it's less of a dream and more of a goal. I've got pretty much everything I need to start learning about that, which really is kind of crazy. I think I want to get one of the new cars running first though. Makes no sense to pull the engine on the S4 when the S6 could be an easy fix after all. Plus, the GTI is on the horizon too, and before this engine goes in, it makes no sense not to tear it down. For now though, I just need to move it over to the wall, which, to be honest, might be a little easier said than done. After all, the hoist doesn't fit over the pallet. In other words, time to improvise and do something slightly sketchy. Who said the first time you use a tool has to be the best time? There's always room to improve. Generally, when using a hoist, you want the engine to be under a crane. Otherwise, you turn it into effectively a wrecking ball. But since that's not possible with the pallet where it is, here I am. And I'm putting most of my weight on the back of this so that it doesn't tip over. Because that is a distinct possibility with all that weight out way past where it's supposed to be supported. Thankfully, that didn't happen though. And now I know that putting it back on the pallet is not gonna work. So I used a sheet of plywood and set it down exactly the way it had been sitting on the pallet. Not an ideal long-term solution, but this will work fine until the engine stand gets here. I was back on track. After using the hoist I spent an hour building quite literally once, I folded it up, put it away, and believe me, the irony was not lost on me. It sucks having to spend that much money on what, right now, feels like a single-use tool, but deep down I know it's a worthwhile investment given everything I have planned. And after this is the fun part. I put away all the non-related tools and went and brought over the ones that'll be a little bit more useful for cars. Earlier this week, I felt like I was stuck in a daydream, and not in the sense that I was quite literally dreaming, but more so in the sense that I felt like I would be stuck in my dreams. Like my goals with the GTI, the S6, all of the other cars, and my life in general would be nothing more than dreams. That it would stop at just being an aspiration. But I'm realizing that that's the same logical pit that I've been falling into this whole time, ever since I started this garage. A goal like the garage, the GTI, or the S6 is a dream, at least right now, where I'm at a stage where I want it, I can see it, but I don't currently have it. What it doesn't mean is that it's not reachable. And I could say the same thing about the garage. It's definitely not done, but it's done enough to work on cars while I continue improving it. With this final push, I've bought myself the flexibility to choose what I want to work on. I could start working on some of my car goals, all the while making the garage better than it already is. Lights, floors, storage, more trim, decorations, turbos, engines, getting a car running. Flexibility is where it's really at. And the base is the garage being at this stage, one where I can continuously make it better and work on other goals at the same time. In other words, after weeks of work, and even though the garage isn't fully complete, I think it's finally time to see if one of my dreams is a good one or if it's a nightmare. But hey, even if it is, there's no reason we can't make it better. Continuous improvement works for everything after all. And in my opinion, working towards something is always better than sitting idle. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more. That's the best way you can help support me and my content. Either way, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.